If it goes right, it's a slice. If it goes left, it's a hook. If it goes straight, it's a miracle. This is Out of Bounds. If it's happening in the world of golf, we're talking about it. Coverage, debate, discussion, pro golf and local golf. Let's do it. This is Out of Bounds. And here are your hosts, Nate Sharman and Josh Durso.
All right, welcome back to the Out of Bounds podcast. Josh Durso, Nate Sharman here in 2024, keeping you in bounds with the latest golf news. The 2024 season is officially underway. That means no more golf speculation, Nate. We get to actually watch golf happen. Isn't that awesome?
We're done with speculation. We're not doing any more of that, you think?
We're proclaiming 2024 speculation over, and we are moving into real golf territory. Are you ready?
I'm ready, and I think all the guys are ready in Hawaii, the 59-man field at the Century this week. I think they're ready too. But yeah, 2024 is going to bring some new form of golf, especially professional golf, right? And so we're going to see some more new storylines come out and stuff. I'm really looking forward to it. So Josh, Happy New Year, and let's get ready and rip it in 24.
Yeah, let's get into this thing. The 2024 season, of course, begins without Jon Rahm playing on the PGA Tour, which will be the biggest adjustment for anybody watching professional golf over the next few months. But Scottie Scheffler won Player of the Year. Little bit of chatter on social media, right or wrong call. What's your take on that, Nate?
So yeah, Scottie wins back-to-back years, has just this incredible season, doesn't miss a cut all year. We talked about it all season long, right? Some of the strokes gained numbers kind of rivaled the Tiger prime years a little bit, right? Maybe not as good, but very close, and the closest that's been since those Tiger years. But in my mind, I think it's kind of wild to me that it's not Viktor Hovland. Viktor Hovland had more wins than Scottie Scheffler this year on tour, 3 versus 2. Vix did come, and one of his wins is the Tour Championship where he started in the lead because he won the week before. So I don't know what you want to take about that, but he still won 2 playoff events even at the end of the day, not even talking about starting strokes. So 2 playoff events at the biggest time, and his other win was at a high-profile event at the Memorial. So I don't know. I mean, Scottie's 2 wins are pretty good too. The Waste Management Phoenix Open, which he's won now twice, and the Players Championship. So the Players Championship is considered the 5th major, right? So that's almost a major win, right? And it's definitely kind of weird to me, I think. But Scottie Scheffler's season was just asinine. I mean, like I said, no missed cuts, 21 top 10s in 23 events, or 21 top 25s, in 23 events. And that's just insane. I mean, we've talked about it and how crazy it was that he didn't win a little bit more, was in a lot of positions to win more, especially with, having one bad round maybe during the tournament and some putting woes throughout the season. But still, hats off to Scottie Scheffler. I would have went Viktor Hovland, but you knew they weren't going to go Jon Rahm after the announcement to LIV, right?
Yeah, and look, I think it's, especially in recent years, it's become a lot harder to pick a player of the year, because what we've seen repeatedly now are essentially like player of the quarters, more or less, right? Like, we see guys have really good streaks of, maybe 6 to 8 weeks, and then it kind of like it fades off a little bit. Jon Rahm comes to mind. Scottie Scheffler, obviously, same kind of deal. Both had very good first half 2023 season, but then kind of didn't do as much in the second half. Viktor Hovland finished incredibly strong, so he was obviously, recency bias plays a big factor there, I think, and why a lot of people believe he should have been Player of the Year. Also, I think, when we're having a conversation about Player of the Year and the tour is trying to build up credibility around the playoffs and the importance of the playoffs, when you have the guy who essentially won the golf Super Bowl not be Player of the Year, I think it creates a little bit of confusion for people. But then again, MVP of the regular season is, in the NFL is not the guy, the quarterback for the team that wins it all, of course, usually. So, excuse me, it's complicated. But I think it's kind of a toss up between those 3 names that I mentioned for 2023. So I don't have a problem with Scheffler being the one, just because of statistically and from a consistency basis. we really haven't seen a season like Scottie's, despite the not having wins, the way Tiger did since Tiger's run in 01. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I come down on it. I don't hate it. It doesn't bother me that much that he won it. But if someone's asking me who the best player in the world right now is, it's Viktor Hovland. At least I think.
Yeah, I agree there too. He just played so well at the end of the year. I mean, I know this isn't anything to do with the PGA Tour season, but it bled into the Ryder Cup too, where he played just incredible. Yeah, over in Rome, and Scottie Scheffler struggled too. I bet that doesn't mean anything for the Player of the Year, right? But yeah, I would agree, Josh. He's the number one player right now. A quick thing: would you take Jon Rahm as a Player of the Year after he went to LIV, or would you even entertain that, or no?
I think he should have been considered. I think he should have. I mean, he was a PGA Tour member last year.
Voting, I think the players vote on it. I think he came in second.
Yeah, I mean, I think, just imagine a scenario where, for example, a LIV player like Brooks Koepka wins 2 majors or perhaps even 3 majors. If a LIV guy wins 2 or 3 majors and, the PGA Tour crowns someone else Player of the Year, again, it's going to be one of these like automatic disqualifying factors. It's just people aren't going to take it seriously. Like that's just, the majors are what matter. Winning tournaments matters. But in lieu of those 2 things, playing really well, really consistently, like Scottie did, is the next most important thing.
Right. Well, I think as a whole, I think people are going to start, casual golf fans anyway, and even more, a lot of big golf fans are going to care a little less about the PGA Tour season as a whole. The fact that we're losing players and the fact that just importance feels at an all-time low, in my opinion. But that's a whole nother conversation for a different day, I would think.
Yeah. You had a little bit of a surprise in there too, with Rookie of the Year. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it was surprising. Eric Cole, the older rookie, won, and people kind of thought Ludwig Aberg was gonna get this award, but Eric Cole comes out with it. Eric Cole played a lot more on the PGA Tour this season than Ludwig Aberg did. Yeah, Ludwig just coming out of college and played some European Tour events as well too. So just didn't really play as many events, but Ludwig did earn a win on the PGA Tour season, more than Eric Cole. Eric Cole didn't have a win, but Ludwig did win in the fall series at the RSM Classic. So do you consider that a part of the season? I don't know, or how much weight does it really pull? But Ludwig, 8 out of 11 events that he did play, top 20 in top 25s. Eric Cole earned 14 top 25s in his 37 starts. Eric Cole played in 2 majors. He was tied for 15 at Oak Hill. We saw a lot of Eric Cole right in Rochester back in the earlier part of the year. Ludwig didn't play in a single major, which is I know is something we don't really talk about in the PGA Tour season for this award, right? The majors aren't really a part of the season in general, but it is still something to kind of talk about it and kind of think about. But yeah, I was kind of surprised that Ludwig didn't win, especially with all the momentum he's gained too. It's kind of similar to Viktor Hovland, right? I think a little bit of recency bias could happen there in my brain too, especially. But yeah, I was surprised. I think Ludwig is on track to have a better career than Eric Cole just because of the age trajectory. I think Ludwig Aberg is going to be around for the foreseeable future. I think he's a guy that could possibly win a major or 2 even in his tenure in the professional golf.
Yeah, I think that just comes down to Ludwig. It felt like he came on later. And frankly, probably too late in the season for him to really be considered for the full season award. I totally agree with your point, though. There's obviously way more upside with Ludwig than
Eric Cole. Is such a cool story, though. It's
absolutely, yeah.
A guy that's broke through this late in his career.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see, who do you think has a better 2024 season?
Oh man, that's a good one. Probably Ludwig. I would think he wins on tour this at least once on this season.
Yeah. Okay, so we have to get a little update here on the situation involving the PGA Tour and PIF, aka LIV Golf. We do not have a deal, obviously, in place. The December 31 timeline passed. And we are operating, the PGA Tour is operating without that infusion of several $1 billion of capital that it desperately needs to get things back on track here within the next year or 2. The 2 sides despite there being some interest on the PGA Tour side to get some American capital invested into itself and its new for-profit entity, the timeline has been pushed out now to early April for the PIF and PGA Tour and associated parties to come to an agreement. What are your thoughts on the timeline push? Good sign, bad sign, or no sign at all?
Yeah, I think we kind of expected this, right? I think when we talked about it even in like October, right? Especially with the 2024 election being next year, that changes everything, right? To with anything that goes on. So I kind of hope to see that we can get a resolution by the Masters, right? That's kind of the tentative date that they've thrown out there. But I'm not super confident that we will. But like I've said in previous episodes, I just don't really understand why we need, a dominance of American investing in the PGA Tour. It's just not going to be enough money to fight against the Saudis. They have just unlimited supplies of money, right? So they can just kind of bleed anybody out. Look at how they've taken Jon Rahm. Maybe next year they take another high-profile guy, a guy like Scottie Scheffler, and then it just eventually bleed the tour out. So in my mind, it's almost like, why fight it too much? Why not give in and make professional golf better for the average user? Getting all these guys playing at the same time. So I think I've kind of made that stance clear these last few episodes, but I'm interested to see what they come up with by the Masters in April.
Yeah, I mean, I think, my skepticism is, and this is the question I asked myself when the new date was announced, and I think I texted you, do I think it's more likely that a deal be approved by the federal regulatory bodies here in the U.S. that are ultimately going to be necessary to make a merger, which is effectively what we're talking about, even though that's not what it's being called, happen in April versus present day, when we are truly in the middle of a presidential election cycle? I think the answer is no, it's not more likely to be approved. Now, can the two sides come to an agreement and maybe a truce of some sort to hold things in place for a year or two? Maybe, but to your point, we found out just a couple weeks ago that LIV only made $100 million last year, invested billions of dollars, billions with a B, just to make $100 million on their 2023 season. They don't care about popularity. They don't care about growing the game. They don't care about any of those things. They literally only care about being the most dominant golf product on the professional side. And they have the resources to make it happen. My one caveat to all of this, I guess, as it relates to American investment, is perhaps American investment can be a bridge for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, until federal regulators are willing to approve a deal between the PIF and PGA Tour. Maybe that's how this is going to be bridged, because at this point, it does look like the PGA Tour is talking to both sides. So they're continuing to talk with the Saudis and try to come up with something there, while also talking to this strategic sports group about infusing a few $1 billion there. So maybe this is kind of like a Band-Aid fix to a short-term problem that the PGA Tour sees with getting this kind of deal, large-scale deal, done with the Saudis.
Yeah, do you think the Saudis are going to get angry or any, I don't know if that's the right verb to use, about what the PGA Tour is doing by talking to both sides? It almost feels like, a guy in high school talking to two girls, right? But I wonder if that's going to, make the PIF mad by, we're kind of using American money for a little while and then going to Saudi-based money, or do they just have an end game of, we don't care how it gets done, we just want to be involved in the PGA Tour?
Yeah, I think the latter is the case.
Yeah,
I think the Saudis understand the geopolitical realities of the world that they live in. Like, this is nothing new for them. I think they're focused and look, they're investing billions of dollars to make peanuts on that investment. Obviously they are setting out to achieve a goal, and they're very focused on achieving that goal, because there isn't another entity in the world, I don't think, that would be willing to spend billions of dollars to only make $100 million back over the course of a year. I just don't. So, that I think is where we stand with that. I think, and we're about to talk about the Rory situation. I think we're to a point now where all of the stakeholders within the PGA Tour are comfortable with Saudi investment happening. And especially the high profile guys that, were really outspoken. We're going to talk about Rory. But, when you're talking about the decision makers, the Patrick Cantlays, the Tiger Woods, the Rory McIlroys, the people who ultimately sway public opinion within the PGA Tour about these things, I think they're going to be, I think most people are on board with the changes that are going to be necessary in terms of merging because, think about just for anybody who's, looking at the 2024 golf schedule, PGA Tour schedule and saying, man, I'm so excited for this. Got these big high profile events with giant purses. All of that goes away like literally next year. And potentially, the PGA Tour is bankrupt within 2 years if an agreement isn't reached. That is just, the stakes are, to say they're high is the understatement of 2024, and we're 3 days in. It's like, it's just not, it isn't even comprehensible, I think, for a lot of people who are just casually watching golf. So no matter what you think about the product, that there is going to be partnership between the two, and there is going to be investment at some point from the Saudis into the PGA Tour. It's unavoidable.
Right. Just that, like I've been preaching, at the end of the day, I just want to see all these guys playing at the same golf course, at the same time, more than the 4 or 5 times a year that we have now with, the majors and the President's Cup / Ryder Cup. But yeah, I think that's the most important part. At the end of the day, we find a way to do this. I think it's going to take a couple of years, like you mentioned, Josh. But at the end of the day, let's hope we're going towards greener pastures.
Yeah, absolutely. Rory McIlroy, he has backtracked a little bit, says he might have been a little too judgmental about the guys who went over to LIV, said he understood why a guy like Jon Rahm went. This was obviously part of a broader story that ran a couple days ago. Have you pored over the quotes? What are your thoughts on the things Rory said and where he stands now?
Right. So yeah, I like every golf fan, I've been out there, kind of reading the quotes. I have one right here. The big quote being, "I thought it was a smart business move from Jon. It's opportunistic." I know that's could be possibly taken out of context a little bit. I think that's the first thing that I kind of go to as some of these quotes are slammed up on a quote board, and you're reading, wow, and you read through the quotes and you say, "Oh wow," to yourself, Rory's going to LIV. I don't think that's true. I delved a little bit into it yesterday and just kind of figured out that I think a little bit of it's out of context, like I said. But at the end of the day, wow, is it crazy that Rory's changed his stance on LIV? Because even if the quotes are a little bit out of context, it still means that Rory either A, is like, wow, I was totally wrong about this, or B, he's just kind of sick and tired of talking about it, which I think I could lean a little bit more towards that way. Yeah. At this point, maybe he's waving the white flag and accepting defeat and just kind of saying these guys are, quote unquote, right? So I think that's kind of interesting from the Rory camp. But at the end of the day, I don't think, Rory said way too much in his past few years to ever go to LIV, so he's not doing that. I think he would quit golf before he did that.
Yeah, he's definitely not going. I can say that with the most confidence in the world. I don't think there's any shot he goes. I think it's interesting because the first thing that came to my mind was, well, of course he's going to change his opinion now. Jon Rahm is one of Rory's friends, one of his close. This is by far the closest ally of Rory over the last 2 to 3 years. You think about their relationship, on the Ryder Cup team outside of golf. This is the closest move to LIV that's happened in Rory's orbit. So it doesn't really surprise me that he is changing his opinion, especially in light of the reality that, this is not he, I believe, was the one who was quoted a couple months ago saying, this is necessary. This move with Saudi investment is necessary in order for the PGA Tour to continue doing what it has done in this new, this new elevated tour tournament status and things like that. These different bigger purse events that the tour set out to achieve. So, it's just going to have to happen. The one, the thing that kind of makes me chuckle is, and I don't know if I mentioned it on one of our last episodes or not in 2023, but the biggest reason I think why Rory never even considered going to LIV was because he is one of the most prolific non-golf investors the PGA Tour has ever seen. In 2019, his net worth was $260 million. Jon Rahm, without this giant LIV contract, has nothing even akin to that. And while he was very comfortable, like Rory has generational wealth. And while a lot of us common folk are going to say, hey, a handful of millions of dollars is generational wealth. But to these guys, having hundreds of millions of dollars of wealth is generational wealth. And, Rory had that locked up 5 years ago.
Right.
And his his savvy on, on the business side of things, to have achieved what he has achieved over the last 10, 15 years, it's impressive. And I think it's the biggest reason why Rory felt the way he felt about everything with LIV. And, it solidifies to me why he'll never go, because he doesn't need to. He literally does not need to in any way, shape, or form. That 260 million number, again, 2019, talking 5 years ago. A lot of that was in the healthcare and tech space, a lot of those investments. And what happened between 2019 and present day, a pandemic and a healthcare industry sector that has gone remarkably towards technology. So again, it just kind of like, it's the context that people don't think about because they're just looking at this through a golf lens. And at the end of the day, that's things are different for Rory. So yeah, I think him coming around is a good thing, though. Right.
He's been hitching his wagon to Tiger Woods too, right? And that, I think that's been good. As it's gone through the Nike, the TGL, and there's more options out there too as well. But yeah, like you said, Josh, Rory just incredibly smart. I think I agree with that. Yeah, I think Rory's just in such a different realm of everybody else on the PGA Tour, right? Jon Rahm. But it is interesting to me, though. I know not to talk too much about Jon Rahm, but Jon Rahm was the closest PGA Tour, I don't know, buddy, the right word to use there. And for him to go to LIV, it really does make you think a little bit. I've had a little bit more time for it to marinate in my head too, right? So I think it's really interesting that, and who could we see possibly go next if they do choose to go American investing?
Yeah, look, I mean, Rory might be the only guy I would put on the absolutely not list.
Yeah, Rory, Tiger. Yeah,
Victor. I think Victor Hovland was another guy who was pretty convincing in his remarks about not wanting to go to LIV. But I say so was Jon Rahm, and here we are. Patrick Cantlay is another one who seems pretty invested in the PGA Tour, especially given his role with the PGA Tour. But hasn't really been a secret that he's also one of the most financially driven players on tour. So, it's everything is an unknown after this season. And I think we just have to see how things play out and go from there. Speaking of this season, we talked about it off the top. The 2024 season is officially underway. Do we have any bold predictions for this season? Maybe major winners? What are you thinking? What are you looking at?
I don't think mine are very bold, but two things I'm looking at. I think you're going to have at least two first-time major winners, and I think Victor Hovland gets it done this year. I think Max Homa gets it done this year. I think you could have more than that. I think it's a rich history of first-time majors in the last few years. But my more bold take, I think, with all this LIV momentum, I still think the PGA Tour, wins the majors this year. I think 3 out of 4 majors come from the PGA Tour. I just mentioned guys like Victor Hovland and Max Homa, Scottie Scheffler in there too. But I think Koepka could possibly win a major on the other side too. I think it wouldn't be crazy if Dustin Johnson competes in a major. I know we haven't heard that name in a long time, but he always seems to get up for the big majors. So I think those are kind of my bold takes. I know they're not really bold at all, but that's kind of what I'm thinking so far for the season. What do you have over there, Josh?
I did some digging through the archives here, and we have since 2016, we have 15 guys with just one major victory, meaning they got their one major victory and they were first time winners. And I think that's going to be the theme that we see continue. Hovland, Homa seem like easy picks on that front. But I would just say my bold prediction for the year, when I look at the list of guys who are major winners since 2016, Jon Rahm, Colin Morikawa, Brooks, DJ, JT, when I look at that list, there's only a couple that stand out to me as guys who I really think could seriously be considered favorites. And, it's Brooks and Rahm, who I believe now have 7 between them. And they're both over on LIV. They would be my betting favorites heading into every major this year. So aside from that, I if it's those two versus the field, I'd give a slight edge to those two. But man, I think we're going to see some first time winners this year.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about with the majors because you might look on paper and say Victor Hovland and Max Homa, how do they not win a major? And then you look back at the majors and there's usually one, if not two, quote unquote, random guys that win a major, right? Not totally random, but guys you don't really think about. Look at last year. We had Wyndham Clark win a major and Brian Harman, two guys we did not think, the odds makers or anybody that were going to win a major. And that always seems to happen. You take a look back at the last few years, and that always seems, you get a guy that rises up and plays just incredible golf. Look at Wyndham Clark; he played just incredible last year. So I think it's really easy on paper for me to get up here and say, Hav and Homa have a good chance to win a major. But I think too, at the end of the day, it's just so hard in golf because there's just so many guys, and you can find your game for those 4 days and just play incredible and get down the stretch and win a major. I got one more bold prediction I just thought of this morning. I think Jordan Spieth has a resurgent year. I don't know what that exactly means, but I think I would love to see part of me is just kind of rooting for that too. I've always been a guy that's rooting for Jordan Spieth, because I think a better Jordan Spieth year always adds to a better tour kind of helpfulness to see Jordan Spieth playing well and being able to contend on Sundays. So let's cheers and hope for a healthy and good 2024 for Mr. Jordan Spieth.
What about Xander Schauffele and Patrick Cantlay?
Oh yeah, see those are guys you don't even think about too, because there's so many guys that can win a major and so many guys that can play so well, because you think, oh, like Brooks is going to win a major, but then you remember that there's 15 to 20 other really good golfers that can win a major at any golf course. So that's why it's so much fun to talk about, right? But I think between the two of them, I think they win a really high profile event. I know they have struggled to win those. Like Xander won the Olympics. That's a very high profile event. Cantlay hasn't done a ton of high profile winning. So you would think at one of these days, it's just going to happen for one of these guys. The floodgates are going to open and they're going to start winning events. Do you have a surprise guy you think could end up in a winner's circle?
I don't, because it's interesting. Like you mentioned the two best the best examples, I think, Wyndham Clark leading in my mind. Like I think about the rush that Wyndham Clark, the profile, his PGA Tour profile took such an accelerated climb in like literally, what was it, 4 weeks basically? Right?
Pretty much.
More or less 4 weeks. It is impossible in my mind to try and isolate who the hell those guys are going to be. It's so hard. There are so many guys who can go out and win. Ludwig?
Yeah.
Like, would anybody be surprised if he would be considered, I guess, a surprise major winner on paper, right? But absolutely not. Like I would argue that he's obviously one of the 10 or 15 best golfers in the world, even just with the limited exposure we've seen to him.
Right.
So it speaks to how absolutely crazy the entire professional golf world is right now, especially when you consider the fact that it is much harder now to, identify what LIV guys are going to play well.
Yeah.
Who's to say that, Patrick Reed or Bryson DeChambeau couldn't win the Masters or couldn't win, one of these majors. And I don't know about eligibility and everything like that. I haven't brushed up on that yet for this coming season. But, those are guys that are seriously good golfers, especially historically in majors. So, how do you frame their likelihood to win against, a guy who a lot of casual golf fans would consider a mid card on the PGA Tour?
Oh man, all this major talk though has got me really excited. We're only a couple months away from the Masters. I think during the college football playoff a couple days ago, they had a couple commercials for the Masters.
Of course,
those are always the best, right? When you start thinking about the Masters, and now we're just talking about it. I've talked about it here that I'm really love the Masters. I think that's my favorite major and favorite golf tournament by far. I sit for 4 days and watch my TV. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of coverage of the Masters, so you really got to dig deep to get that. That's something we can talk about as we get closer and closer to this tournament. But yeah, Josh, what's your favorite major? I said the Masters. Let's give me yours here and hear about 2024.
U.S. Open.
U.S. Open's a lot.
U.S. Open, and to me, it's just because of the everyman can, in theory, be a part of that tournament, and I think that just makes it so interesting.
I agree. That's probably two for me. I think it being on Father's Day is a lot of fun too.
What's the least interesting one to you?
The least interesting? I mean, I think least interesting is tough. I think I'm interested in all of them, but for me, I guess it would probably be the Open Championship. I think just being across the pond, I think it might be, I still find it extremely interesting. It's such a different brand of golf too, right? Than we play over here. We can debate that, whether if that's good or bad or what that means, I guess. But I think for me, it is the British Open. Sometimes the time difference can kind of mess you up too. So I think that's part of it.
Least interesting for me, I think, is the PGA Championship because it doesn't really have an identity right now.
Yeah.
It's like lost. We don't know where, we don't know the venues of it in a lot of cases moving forward. We don't know if it's trying to be more like the US Open or if it's trying to be its own thing. And because of that, especially with some of the higher scores or better scoring we've seen in that event historically over our lifetimes, it's made it a little less interesting in total. But hey,
make a mistake if they don't go back to Oak Hill, I'll tell you that.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the show. You can catch more over at our Substack. It's outofboundsgolf.substack.com. Subscribe to the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and follow us on TikTok if you want to see more from us in between episodes. For Nate Sharman, I'm Josh Durso, and remember, whether it's down the middle or out of bounds, keep on swinging.
You've been listening to Out of Bounds. If it's coverage, debate, or discussion of pro and local golf, we'll be talking about it. Be sure to visit the website. Find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. See you next time on Out of Bounds.